I've got a question about conducting. How, to me, the way I've learned music, I've never been exposed to conducting. It doesn't seem well for a musician who can read music. I feel like every musician can conduct, but maybe you're gonna prove me wrong. Tell me wrong. But I also thought,
yeah.
I also thought, also writing music and improvising. I've wrote some music, but very low level, and improvising as well a little bit, but really late. And I've hated all the solfège. Is that the word in English as well? Like all the theory, music theory. I've always hated it until I started to understand how you write some music, and I thought, why now? I'm thinking, why is it not taught earlier? And same as conducting, because if you play an instrument that plays in orchestras and stuff, you'll have a better understanding of what it is to play with others and what are the advantages. So, that's a broad question. But how has it changed? What sort of skills do you need to?
Okay, well,
conduct?
I mean, conductors they come in a broad variety of sort of different styles of people. Let's put it that way. I mean, essentially, what you've got 80 people in front of you that are all experts.
Mm-hmm.
And you need somebody to focus that expertise into one vision, as it were, of what the music is supposed to be.
Yeah.
So they are the chief, the conductor's role is they are the chief interpreter of a piece of music. And part of their role, obviously, they've got to be great music. I mean, they've got scores in front of them, they've got all the parts in front of them. They have to know all those parts. So that, very simply, they're going to put the piece together. They're going to make sure you can hear the tunes and you can hear the accompaniments below the tunes and all that sort of basic side of it all. But, when you come to conduct the Hallé for the first rehearsal of a piece, what is expected is that everybody can play the part. That's already there. That's already done.
Yeah.
What the conductor does is blend all those different sounds into a single interpretation.
Yeah.
Otherwise, if everybody's got their own different ideas about how that fits, the whole ensemble doesn't work. It's a real team effort.
Yeah.
So that's that approach. I mean, broadly from what you were saying in your question there, Mark, I mean, we are fortunate in this country. We have something called the National Plan for Music Education.
Okay. Never
So
heard about
what that does, certainly across England schools, for instance, is it provides a sort of a basic blueprint of what a child's musical experience should be.
Yeah.
So that broadly means that a child should be given the opportunity to play an instrument, and just as importantly as that, they should be given the opportunity to sing, to develop their musical skills through ensemble playing.
Okay.
So that's from a very, very early stage, and the Hallé, our program is very much connected to exactly that ethos. So we run a number of different schemes with all our hub partners that we work. We've got 17 music education hub partners from Sefton to Nottingham via County Durham and Telford and Brecon and right. We've a big coverage of all that. But essentially, what we're doing with that is we are a key part of those children's education musically. So the National Plan has an appendix to it, which gives a whole list of different musics from world music all across the whole spectrum, but quite a lot of orchestral music in there.
Okay.
So there's a real reason in England for an orchestra to be absolutely part of a child's music education, and we are very. So, for instance, we have this scheme that is called the Whole Class Ensemble Teaching Programme, which in primary schools allows every child at an English primary school to play an instrument. And the way we work with that is we provide this concert in the summer term for those children to come and celebrate their musicality and what they've learned and so on. So they come and play with Hallé. It's literally called Come and Play with Hallé. And to give you an example of how that last summer, or summer 22, 25,000 children played with Hallé. So
25,000.
Yeah.
Not all at once.
Not all at once, but across 19 countries all over.
Could be.
Yeah.
So
the stadium.
that is about dropping the seeds.
Yeah.
You may not come back to us next week to a concert, but actually, we are finding students at the Royal Northern, with Chet or wherever, who've their first connection to the Hallé was coming to play with them.
Brilliant.
That's how it has to work. That progression that's how it has to work. And as I say, we're right from the very beginning, the first musical experiences, through to the hope that our future players and our future audience are going to come out of those seeds we plant in those very early years.
Or some of them at least.
Absolutely, Martin. Yeah, we're quite realistic about it. As I say, they're not coming back to us next week. But having been in the business 40 years, when I'm almost in my first week as a player, somebody said to me, "Well, when all these older people, when they've all died off, you won't have an audience." But it hasn't worked that way. Largely because people come to different musics at different time in their lives. We can't take it for granted by any sense. We've got to work at that. But we keep that process going, and I think you have to sow those seeds in the very early stage.
The education program is as much about audience development for the future as it is about that moment of enjoyment in the moment at that time. It's, as Steve says, it is making sure that people understand that an orchestra can be for them. That we sort of demystify some of that. Perhaps perception that I don't know very, very much about that, so therefore I can't access it. A big part of what we're trying to achieve as an organisation, particularly in the 21st century, is to strip all of that away. So this is for you. If you want it, it's here for you. If this moves you in any way, and I think as Steve sort of pointed out before, that we can show examples of unlikely groups responding to the music of the Hallé in a very positive way. So therefore, if we can get to people, we think we can engage with them, and we think they'll enjoy it. So that's always the mission. Kind of the core of what we do, really. I think.
If you would like to come to Stratford, you're very welcome.
Yeah.
We've some schools there.
Yeah, we've got a few.
Stratford Hall as well.
All right. Well, we're in Gorse Hill.
Okay,
Primary School. We do a program there called Inspire, Hallé Inspire, which there's English as second language is pretty high in Gorse Hill Primary School, but what this project, which works in 4 primary schools across Greater Manchester, in a very detailed way. It's a real partnership with the school. The school sets the curriculum, so at every term they will come up with a theme. It could be anything. It could be the science of irreversible change, or it could be the Egyptians or something like that. We musicalise that, and we work with these children with using creative music.
Great.
And the connection that is provided through the music is amazing. I mean, one of the great parts of my job is I can see these children at the beginning of that journey in September, and they're starting off, and their concentration is virtually nothing, But by the time they get a culmination every term, and how those children grow in terms of their confidence, in terms of their concentration and performing abilities. They write poems, they set their poems to music with the Hallé players, and they perform these to parents. It's just brilliant to see that happen. So there's music again, as Martin been saying, the power of music and how it can do that.
Well, from a personal point of view, my daughter is just getting 4. She'll be 4 in Feb, and she loves singing. She always sings at home. She makes up her own lyrics as well.
Okay, Hallé Children's Choir opens to children 8. So she's got a little.
But she's very, very shy, and I've always been worried about that shyness. But she recently had 2 Christmas songs taught at nursery, and they were singing in a group. And we thought also with the teachers that she would be very shy, so they would be worried because of having to sing in front of all those adults. But she was very good during the rehearsals, and she actually performed really, really well and sang really, really well.
Not a dry eye in the house.
Absolutely, I'm really glad to hear that singing is happening, because that's one of the biggest challenges at the moment we have. There's a marked lack of singing, largely because, very sadly, that ability in schools has gone, or in so many cases. I mean, one of the big problems we find is, certainly when I was at school many moons ago, there was somebody who could play the piano, there was a piano instrument there. Nowadays they're not. And there's too many schools around where there's no singing.
So that hesitancy and shyness extends to the staff, and so we do offer programs to help school teachers. Leading school choirs is one of the programs that we've run over the years, and that's very directly intended. Somebody that perhaps doesn't see themselves as a specialist music teacher. The voice is the great equalizer, isn't it? Everybody's got a voice of some sort. The qualities vary from. But I strongly believe that everybody can be taught to sing, and you just need enthusiasm and confidence and backing.
Yeah, I always wondered, will you always can every child or every person sing in tune? If you get the right education or not, if you get the right.
It depends on the age that when they're exposed to that. So you've got this amazing studies that have been done, for instance, in Africa, the African village model, which means that in certain of these, obviously every child, every parent, everybody sings.
Yeah.
Where that happens, there's been various studies about sort of human intelligence, and music is part of that intelligence. But it needs to happen in those formative years. So early years is absolute key to get those musical processes started.
Yeah.
Because if it's left until basically something after the age of 7 or 8, and there's no music in before then, that's when people can't necessarily sing in tune. So it's.
I would say harder, but not impossible.
I would agree with you, but
because I think you would find people perhaps who've come to the community choir, for example, and have not, would say, well, I can't even hold a tune, and by the time they've worked with a professional, and the thing about singing, like any physical activity, you have to train.
Yeah.
So you don't go to a gym and expect that you can lift 100. Kgs straight away. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But if you work with somebody that shows you the technique and how to breathe and
True,
how to imagine pitch, sometimes it's using different parts of your brain that perhaps you haven't previously engaged.
It's like anything, though, isn't it? If you've done it at an early stage, it's a lot easier.
But I would back any one of our choral practitioners to get somebody in tune. Absolutely. Even in people in their senior years, I think they would back themselves to get them to sing in tune.
Yeah, I can believe that. The brain, I guess it's all happening in the brain. The brain is more flexible when we're younger, but it doesn't mean it's very rigid when we're older. And something that keeps me motivated, but I felt really bad of having to stop playing music, doing at uni because I didn't have time, I didn't have the facilities and stuff. But then I've always thought I can practice sport now because I'm fit enough and young enough to practice it. But there will be some time when I won't be able to practice as much. But music can be played until much later.
Yeah.
And it's incredible how much you can learn. Obviously, when you're a child, you learn quicker, but it's incredible how quickly you can learn an instrument. So I'm hopeful that later, when I will have more time,
you'll be a multi-instrumentalist. Is that the plan?
Keep playing loads.
Yeah.
What's your plan for Christmas? What's the Hallé's plans for Christmas?
Goodness me, I was talking to Martin, we've got 18 concerts in December.
18?
Yeah, so those are sort of obviously Christmas concerts. There are some regular concerts as well. We've got, in recent years, we've started a chamber series. So there's 8 chamber concerts with a smaller number of players that perform here at Hallé St Peter's. And we do these, what we call relaxed concerts. So for specialist sort of type audiences that we're looking at people that wouldn't come normally necessarily to a Hallé concert, or in a lot of cases have been part of our audience before but now don't feel able to come because we're working with dementia families, we're working with adults with learning difficulties and stroke victims and things like that. So there's quite a variety of different concerts. Mostly, obviously, this time of year with a Christmas theme involved. Probably the biggest concerts we do, aren't they, Martin? There are 3 the carol concerts. Where we've got all our ensembles playing part of that.
Bells, whistles, organs,
absolutely,
orchestras, choirs.
It's all going on.
Yeah.
So we do those, and then we've got right at the end of just before Christmas, we've got this snowman concert. So the orchestra provides a live accompaniment to the snowman film, but in the first half of that, there's lots of different sort of more activity type pieces, in a sense to wear the kids out, a bit of an interval if you like, and then they'll sit with their families and just watch the snowman. So we've got that.
Yeah, and those concerts feature a singer from the children's choir who sings the soprano part of Walking in the Air, which sort of famously known to that piece. But it's
plenty going on.
Yeah, and then outside of the Hallé's activities, so my team, so a large part of the responsibilities of the Hallé Venues team is to animate the building when the Hallé ensembles aren't in the building. So that's kind of, I suppose 50% of our activities are internal activities, rehearsals and recordings and small size performances. And then outside of that, as a sort of commercial concern, is to animate the space and initially try to cover the costs of operating here. And then, hopefully in time turn that into profit, which can then go back into our artistic activity. So during that period, so when the orchestra aren't here, we do the things that venues do. So in the past 24 hours, we will move from having had a large corporate Christmas party last night to tonight, bringing in the choir to rehearse alongside a smaller chamber-sized orchestra as they prepare for the performance of Handel's Messiah at the Bridgewater Hall on Saturday. So it's ever evolving. So we're kind of December is a very, very busy period for the Hallé. Always traditionally has been, and financially it's a very important time of year for us. We our box office relies upon a good Christmas to kind of within our annual target. A lot of the money comes in through the doors during the December period.
I was going to ask that.
Yeah, so it's a very important part of. Because particularly because I suppose we're able at this time of year, quite a lot of our offering has very, very broad appeal, and therefore, families engage at all generations. Sometimes you've got 4 generations of family at a concert together. So therefore, the carol concerts that Steve referred to repeat. So we do the same show 3 times over 2 days, and fit another concert in with our youth ensembles in between that. It's a busy period and important financially for us. So
one thing I forgot to say is the society is a charity.
That's correct. Yeah,
and I've got a question. How does the charity affect the organisation side? And if you,
significantly,
benefits, and what are the advantages? What are the disadvantages? And also a question which I'm just thinking now: what would you do differently if you were not a charity?
Well, I think our charitable status is incredibly important. Crucially, I suppose in the UK, we always use the word charity. Elsewhere in the world, they might use the word. They might describe us as a not-for-profit. Yeah, and I think that's kind of an important distinction. So I've worked for most of my career in what would be described as the third sector for not-for-profit organisations. I've worked for care charities. I've worked for mental health charities, and now I work for a charity that's based in the arts. And I think the key to all of those organisations is that you are providing something of service to the communities in which you work. And the Hallé is no different to a cancer care charity in some ways. In that way, what we're trying to do is make people's lives better through our fundamental existence. So the structure of the organisation is that our funding comes from a variety of activities. So we receive some central and local government grants, via the Arts Council, through the Greater Manchester Combined Authority, and through Manchester City Council. So we receive money, and those monies are given in following. We have to apply for those monies, and those applications contain criteria of what we will do on receipt of those monies to fulfil kind of a contract, if you like, with the funders. So in Greater Manchester, we have a certain set of criteria in terms of where we will work and how we will work and who we will try to reach. That's the same with the Arts Council funding, which is the sort of the central government, and Manchester City Council. Obviously, that's very specific to our activity within the City of Manchester, and our residency at the Bridgewater Hall. That particularly supports that area of our work. Outside of those sorts of grants, if you like, we generate income through box office and ticket sales as a concert promoter, and then in addition to that, the orchestra exists as a sort of a band for hire, if you like, and we go to other concert venues and other places where we are engaged to play there, and we receive a fee for playing there. We work in broadcast and recording, so fees come in from those activities, some more lucrative than others. And then in addition to that, we then have a fundraising need, and we have a brilliant development team. Development is a word that the arts use when they really mean fundraising. But I understand why, but having worked in other charitable areas, I think fundraising is a much better expression, because it says exactly what it is that you're trying to do, and it leaves people in no doubt that you need to raise funds. So the organisation, it's probably more than a 7-figure sum now that we bring in through fundraising activities alone, and that splits down to money that we receive from companies through sponsorship, and that's very often some form of transactional relationship. They give a bit and they receive something back, whether it's branding, whether it's association, whether it's activity. What we like to do with our sponsors is to make those relationships interesting. It's not just we talked about Siemens.
It's been a really fascinating development. I mean, the way that, for instance, the education role has got more involved in this connection, particularly with the corporates. It used to be in years gone by, it was corporates bringing clients to concerts and all that sort of thing. That doesn't really happen much now. But one of the joys of my job is the way that we've developed, really, as Martin referred to there, is those really in-depth relationships with our sponsors. So, for instance, our principal sponsor, just to say, that's at PZ Cussons. One of the things that we do for all our schools concerts in the spring, the Hallé for Youth concerts, every child gets a scratch and sniff card that's produced by the fragrance team at PZ Cussons. They work with me in terms of the choice of the music. So there's a scratch and sniff card that represents that for 3 pieces of music in a concert, and there's a fragrance that's designed to go with that piece of music. I don't know another orchestra in the world that does anything quite so wacky as that. But it means if you come to the Hallé, it's a multi-sensory experience. So, we have screens with all the stuff on, bits of the music and all that sort of thing there. You've got the orchestra to listen to, and then you actually smell it as well. So that has come purely through this relationship, which, as I say, gone are the time where a sponsor might say, well, we like what you're doing, here's a few quid, carry on doing what you do. Now it's more a relationship.
And workforce engagement, and so sometimes it's about staff reward, or we talked earlier about well-being, staff being given the opportunity to come, much less as a sort of corporate entertainment thing, but like a well-being thing is probably. And we work with one of our longest standing supporters, Brother. They've been involved in all sorts of elements of our work. So we do Steve's team do a brilliant scheme called Hallé Empresarios, which provides it's usually secondary school children the opportunity to imagine the life of being a concert promoter for a day. And so they work in the business world, but they see the business world from our perspective of, okay, we're going to put a concert. What are the things that you have to think about to do that? What might go wrong? And during the course of the day, Steve and his team have come up with some flashcards, which eventually, they think everything's going fine, and then
but it isn't.
We drop it in because your soloist has just called and they can't get on their flight from such and such to get to you in time for the concert. What are you going to do? So it's about that kind of developmental thought of planning and then replanning, which is a large part of what the Hallé does on a day-to-day basis. Sort of being adaptable, have a plan. But then, is your plan adaptable enough? Will it survive, a curveball?
And brother judged that.
Yeah.
So there's a small prize for the winning group, but the brother sort of do like a Dragon's Den with that. So they're questioning, why have you chucked your ticket prices at that price? Why do you think you're going to, So they really question the students as to how they go on that, and they have to promote that.
It's that sort of blend between music and economics, I suppose. It's, kind of business studies.
And with Siemens, they've got a graduate engineer scheme. So we get heavily involved in that. So, for instance, we've got a dementia program over at Pendine Care Homes in Wrexham, and those engineers have been developing a musical wristband, that basically means that somebody can shake their hand and play a shaker, or they can play a drum, or they can play a tune by just lifting up their hand and so on, which means that so many more of them can actually take part in the creative side of the workshop. That's come through that relationship.
So it directly addresses the limitations that some people may have and tries to engage and include, and I think that's a big part of what we're
those relationships now with those organisations.
So that's
brilliant.
kind of the business side of how our funding works, and then the world, within the charitable sector, there are a number of trusts and foundations who exist to assist with charitable activities. So part of the team, their job is to go out and match the trust with the activity, and Steve's team and the ensembles team often will engage in that. They kind of perhaps they can provide funding to enable us to do things that we might not ordinarily do. Actually, we've just recently had, from an environmental perspective, we've just recently had a success, which meant that we will be able to add some solar power to the building that we're currently in, which we weren't originally able to afford. So that's helped us in that way and makes us more sustainable financially and environmentally. So the Trust and Foundations is a kind of a key part of any arts organisation sort of set up, and we're very fortunate that we have a number of trusts who've been incredibly generous over the years to us. And then the final part of that, and this is where I came into the organisation when I first came in, the Hallé, we talked about Hallé family. So we've talked about the membership of the organisation, and they are people who pay a membership fee and are associated with the organisation. But outside of the membership scheme, we have a patron programme, and that has many hundreds of people in it. Probably, I would say, at its broadest, approaching 1,000 people who give in some way every month or every year. They give a gift over and above what they give through attending concerts. The most important way in which people can engage with this is always coming to concerts, buying tickets. That's we want to see people in the concert hall, but for people that perhaps live a bit further away and aren't as able to get to Manchester, but still want to support the Hallé, they will send us gifts. So there's a patron programme or a chair endowment scheme.
Chair endowment is good, isn't it?
Where they can associate with the organisation and feel a bit closer, and those people are able to, depending on when and how they give, access certain, I suppose, behind the scenes elements in return for their support. That we're able to kind of bring them a bit closer to the organisation. And they're kind of critical parts of our funding. The Hallé at the end of the 20th century found itself in financial trouble, and critical to its sort of continuation was the fact that the public at that time responded and sent money, bailed us out, and we don't take that support for granted at all. We're very, very appreciative still to this day of what they did for us at that time. So and what has happened from that is that you have a group of people who continue to give in a committed way, and that enables the Hallé to go and do some things that perhaps you asked the question about what would be the difference between you being a commercial entity and doing. If we only did things for profit, there would be a lot of things that we do that we wouldn't be able to do. That element of philanthropic support and I suppose benevolence from the audience and our public funders and corporate supporters, it gives us the opportunity to do things that perhaps on paper commercially don't make sense.
Yeah.
But artistically are absolutely vital. And I think that's art subsidies are a long topic, and we probably haven't got enough time to talk about, the UK's response to the UK's model is a different model to the US's model, and it's a different model to Europe's model. I don't know, there are somewhere in between is the right version of that. There are orchestras in the major cities in Europe that are completely subsidised.
Yeah.
And ticket prices are cheap, and that enables people to access art. Now, you would say, sitting where we sit, that's the perfect model. There may be opposing views in those countries. I don't know, but so we manage. It's a large organisation, so we sort of talked about the turnover. I think the last sort of 8-9 million is sort of the turnover of the organisation. So it's not an inconsiderable enterprise. Mm-hmm. But so if we get to the end of the year and there's money left in the pot, then that money gets used for quality
artistic
projects, an artistic programme or education and outreach work. And it's we're backed up. The society is backed up by a board of trustees. They have oversight, I suppose, and then they work with the executive and the senior management team, and who deliver on a day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month basis, and set our strategic challenges and targets, and so the governance of the organisation, I think, works very well. We have a group of people that scrutinise what we do, and then allow us through that scrutiny to then get on and deliver the work. So I think it's I don't know that I would change the model.
No, I wouldn't. I totally agree.
For 100 since 1899, since Hallé died, since the man that formed it, and this model's been a version of this has been the way that we've operated, and I think it makes sense. I think it stacks up. Something we must be doing something right. We're still here, And there's lots of commercial entities who haven't lasted that long and wouldn't last that long. So, but we always come back to that. Sense of
you can always do better. But it's doing well. It's doing pretty well from
The health of the organisation is something that we check all the time.
Absolutely,
all the time. Are we true to our mission? Are we true to the vision of the original vision of the organisation? Is that still in our sights? Are we delivering for the people that we're supposed to serve? We talk about that a lot, and increasingly we're talking about, are we reaching? As society around us has evolved, are we reaching everybody that we can reach? And I think that's the challenge for a 21st century organisation, is to be relevant in a ever evolving society. Are we representative of the city that we work in? Do we reflect the city that we work in? When the city changes, how quickly can we change to reflect that? So relevance and diversity, I think, are really important parts of the future.
Totally top of our agenda in the way that works. The Hallé's shown, as Martin referred to, we've been adaptable.
Yep.
All the way that's coming in, and I think the basic sort of programs and the ideas are there for the next stage. And I've mentioned before the more flexible ensemble, an ensemble that's going to get more out into the community in various different forms.
Yep.
For instance, the other day we did a relaxed concert in Staley Bridge as part of the celebrations with Staley Bridge as the Greater Manchester Combined Authority Town of Culture, and the feedback and the response we got was amazing. So that's something we've learned from that, and we'll continue to do that. in terms. You can't get an 80-piece orchestra in so many places in Greater Manchester, but a smaller group.
Yeah, sometimes they have to come to us.
Absolutely, that. There's a bit.
There's a reason concert halls exist.
Yes, there is.
Yeah, true.
But there's also a great benefit to getting our musicians out there. I mean, Sir Marc Elder would argue the same thing as I would on this, and that is keeping the musicians fresh is really important part of the way we work with them. So I found when I was a player, I used to call it "Oh no, not Beethoven 5 syndrome." Yeah, it's great music, but we've done it 8 times this week, and I don't really want to play it again. So there's got to be more to an orchestra musician's life in terms of how you develop that, and the education program and the opportunity to come here with Martin and his team to play the chamber concerts and relaxed concerts, all these different forms of working it out in the schools keeps those musicians fresh.